For watermen, nature often set the rules of engagement, defining how easy it would be to access a resource. But as Walter Chu explained, innovative techniques and technology help to maximize the economic value that watermen saw in the bay.
So basically, here's how I adapted in the process of 30 years of survival. I developed systems that became more efficient on my vessel. It allowed me to work by myself instead of hiring 2 or 3 deckhands where I had to share that money every day with them. I could stay on there by developing automatic trawl line conch trap systems that worked by themselves, and all I did was put the conchs in the bag at the end, rebait the thing, and throw it back overboard. The system automatically hauled it up, steered the boat, did all those things. I shifted to larger mesh sizes to target a higher profit fish and spend less time playing with bunkers, I said. You can make money on bunkers, but you have to pick so many of them that it's like, oh, forget this. I used computer records to analyze and determine the critical dates to shift my efforts from one species to another. Because by shifting at the right time, you maximize your profit. Although you could still make money at the thing you were catching, you should have shifted away from that 2 weeks ago and made more money doing plan B. And I was one of the first guys in the bay to begin using plotters, electronic plotters that kept track of where I was doing and where I was doing it for fisheries that involved dredging and trapping. Trapping conchs. Conchs don't tend to walk very far, very fast. So when you catch them here today, you need to move to here tomorrow. And the distance is about 100 feet. Now, if you're in the bay without a plotter, 100 feet, it's hard to figure out if you're setting your trap where you had it yesterday or 100 feet away from that, all the way down a half-mile line. And so with plotters, you could effectively pattern catch in an area, whereas other people didn't understand what pattern you were working, and you could walk right past them like why they're sitting still and you're just mowing the grass.
Steve Fleetwood, area resident and CEO of Bivalve Packing, also recalled how technology has changed and impacted his industry over the past several decades.
You know, it's amazing. Used to be, I can remember being scared to death at the boarding because I had to leave the dock and go out the river in the fog, and I had to watch my watch and watch my compass, and I was scared to death. I was young. I was scared to death I was going to run that boat on the marsh or hit somebody else. And nowadays you can leave right out of this dock and look right in the computer screen and radar and go right on up there, and I've worked all day long and never hardly seen the bow of the boat, and come right home and never seen nothing until I hit the dock. So, you know, we have gone a long way in electronics and catch efficiency.
Technology, though, hasn't been the only human factor at work in the bay. As Walter Chu and Steve Fleetwood discuss, in dealing with natural resource challenges and limits, state and industry regulation has also played an important role in the bay and in their lives.
Then came the state into this process, and they began to manage the people in the bay, not the resource, but the people. They started saying, well, you have to get a license, so at least we know who you are out there and how many of you are out there. And when we had conflicts in terms of too many nets, and that happened as a result of a weakfish bloom that we had, of large weakfish showing up in the middle of the bay, everybody could make an easy buck by getting a gill net, running and getting a license, and running out in the middle of the bay and catching these fish, because they're there, bring them home, sell them, make a quarter a pound, didn't matter. You still made a couple $100 every night, and that was big money back then. The state looked at that and said, well, wait a minute, these people are bumping into each other. We're going to limit the number of licenses that we're issuing. So they began with a limited entry by gear type. In other words, I got a limited entry license to do my stake net licensing for shad, and I got a limited entry license to do my drifting gill net license. So you see that they were doing it by gear type. Still, that's not managing the resource.
I've also been a council member on the Delaware Bay Shellfish Council for 20 years. And I'm an executive board and executive committee member of the ISSC. You heard a lot about things that have happened through the years. The ISSC is actually the Interstate Shellfish Sanitation Commission. They regulate interstate shellfish transportation throughout the United States. Everything that involves interstate transportation of shellfish, handling, record keeping, all those things are the ISSC regulates and sets up the rules that the states use to govern their industries. It's not something that's fun. I got to go out to Seattle in a couple weeks, and I'd sure rather take a licking than go there, but it's one of those things that if you're not involved, whatever happens and whatever comes down the road, you have to deal with it. So I've been going to the ISSC for probably 20 years, representing the New Jersey industry and trying to make sure that nothing's coming down the road here that we can't deal with. Our biggest challenges, I guess, in the Delaware Bay, as far as the oyster industry through the years, I guess, well, there's been a lot, but I guess disease is probably number one. We back in the 50s, MSX came. It came and it was dealt with through the years. In 86 it came again and wiped everything out. We didn't oyster, I guess, for probably 4 years until 1990. We planted again. Everything was great. We figured we were back in business again. 91, there's a lot more boats went. We planted a lot more oysters and everything died. We probably went through 4 years after that. Things started to come back, and we knew we kind of had to make a decision how we were going to manage the fishery in a different way. Only one good thing about the Delaware Bay oyster fishery is it's kind of a single user fishery. We really never had to deal with recreational people. We've never had to deal with anybody else. So I guess you'd kind of say it's always been up to the oyster industry itself how we, what happened and how we regulated ourselves and whether we still had stuff to catch, along with Rutgers and with DP and with the council itself. And we've kind of been the ones to make the decisions on what our what our future was, I guess. So we've done a pretty good job, despite a few ups and downs.
Not every resource challenge, however, has been addressed by industry self-regulation. What happens when there are different users and different uses for the same resource? As Walter Chu sees it, the prioritization of interests raises questions today about justice for watermen in the Bay.
Here's the secret. You can either be very lucky and be in the right place doing the right thing when the state wants to shut something else down and you still survive, or you have to be very knowledgeable about what the state is going to do and have a plan B. You argue about the regulation based on the philosophy of it being wrong, but you never argue about the details of the loopholes you see, because if you argue about them, they close them. And that's your survival technique, is to walk through the loophole and say, well, you didn't say you couldn't do this. And you survive by doing that for another 2 or 3 years. You see what's happening here is you're trying to help them do the right thing, but you know that they're cutting you apart one piece at a time, and you need to survive. So that's how you do it. And you keep quiet about plan B. You don't tell them what you're going to do next, because they will be on top of it in a hurry. Where is the environmental justice here? These fishermen were out here and had staked the claim for hundreds of years, and now they're getting whatever nobody else wants, rather than what's important. There's the problem. I don't know the answer, but there's the problem.
As Christopher Whitney noted in discussing the history of the red knot, conservation efforts and different interests have encouraged state action, and science has been central to the creation of resource laws and regulations.
So in response to these fears of potential extinction of red knots and other shorebirds, hunters, conservationists, all banded together, mostly blaming market hunters, what they called pot hunters, for shooting too many birds, and rallied for state intervention and stricter hunting laws for migratory birds. Now, as in addition to the political pressure on the government to restrict migratory bird hunting, it was scientists at the Biological Survey, which is actually an ancestor of the Fish and Wildlife Service that wasn't created until 1940. At the turn of the century, the bureaucracy in charge of establishing the facts about shorebird populations and what was happening to them was called the Biological Survey, and it was housed in the Department of Agriculture. They were the ones that provided the final impetus and justification for limiting migratory bird hunting, and that all sort of culminated in 1918 with the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, as well as a number of state-level regulations.
As Michael Sharapa pointed out, some of the Bay's local resource disputes have had a major legal impact, shaping what has been called the public trust doctrine, which helps to define the government's role in natural resource issues.
I think it bears keeping in mind as well, and Bonnie McKay couldn't be here with us today, unfortunately, is that where we are right now, and this is something that gets lost, and all New Jerseyans really ought to be aware of it, is that the Delaware Bay and the lower Delaware River were pivotal in what we call the shaping of the public trust doctrine. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard that phrase, but essentially what it means is the government tries to play a referee role, and I know the first year are going to love that characterization, supposedly play a referee role in making sure that natural resources get used for the greatest common good. And those flare-ups occurred here in large measure around the shad fisheries, because you had smaller shad operators operating out of shad skiffs who had to compete with shad fishermen who were working on shore-based operations. You had oystermen again who wanted to privatize the grounds, which I'm sure a number of the oystermen in the crowd here certainly are well aware of, which was always firmly rejected in this area in terms of having the upper bay be a commons that would be drawn on for seed oysters to be planted in the lower bay. And all this went to court. It all got very nasty at one point. In the 1890s, the state of New Jersey was very interested in privatizing a lot of these oyster grounds, and most of the oystermen down here really got up in arms about it. And it went to the courts, and ultimately it led to some of the most pivotal court cases that really had an impact nationally in terms of how natural resources were going to be shared by all folks in communities.
It seems that the natural environment and man's concepts of justice intersect directly at the heart of New Jersey's Delaware Bay. A close look at its rich history, many users, and diverse uses reveals the important role that cultural values, innovation, technology, law, regulation, and science all have to play in equitably managing a shared environmental resource. There are many ways that the environment and justice have intersected throughout history and in New Jersey. Please check our website, www.njch.org, for more information and resources specific to New Jersey. For the New Jersey Council for the Humanities, I'm Bob Mann. Thanks for watching.